Okay guys, today we are going to talk about prime factorization. Prime factorization is when you list all the prime factors of a number. So let's look at this. Let's take a number like 30. What we're going to do is we're going to break 30 down into the numbers that can multiply to equal 30. Now there are several options, so we'll just choose one. I'll just choose the most obvious, which is 10 times 3. Those are two factors that multiply together to get 30. So now we got to see if 10 or 3 breaks down again. 10 breaks down into 5 times 2, and 3 does not break down, because the only thing it would break down into would be 3 and 1, and we don't write a 1 in our prime factorization because it looks like this little bar right here, and we don't want to confuse the two. So we never write it down any further if it only breaks down into 3 times 1. We just bring it down. Another name for prime factorization are factor trees, and the reason is because when you finish making this, it ends up looking like a tree. So we see we can't break down 5 anymore, we can't break down 2 anymore, and we can't break down 3 anymore. So those are all the prime factors that multiply to get 30. So how do we write that as an answer? Let me circle these so we know. We write that as 2 times 3 times 5. That is the prime factorization of 30. Because 2 is prime, 3 is prime, and 5 is prime. If we do 2 times 3, we get 6. 6 times 5 is 30, which matches our original number, which shows that our prime factorization was correct. You can only have prime factorization if every single factor is prime. Now, I said there was more than one way to do this, so if we look at this factor tree of 30, instead of using 10 and 3, it could have broke 30 down into 6 and 5, because 6 times 5 is 30. And then I would have broke 6 down into 2 times 3, and 5 doesn't break down. And if you notice, even though I broke it down differently, I end up with the exact same prime factors in the end. So in the end, the prime factorization is the same. So let's find the prime factorization of, let's do 80. Again, there's several ways you can do this. One of them would be 40 times 2. To me, that's the easiest, so that's where I'm going to start. So 40 breaks down into 10 times 4. 2 does not break down because it's prime. We know that 10 breaks down into 5 times 2. 4 breaks down into 2 times 2, and 2 doesn't break down. Now, none of these numbers down here will break down because they're all prime. So the prime factorization is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. That is my prime factorization of 80. And if I check that, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, and 16 times 5 is 40. So that's how I know that prime factorization is correct. And if I wanted to do something other than 40 times 2, I could have done the other obvious one, which is 10 times 8, and broken that down. 10 breaks down into 5 times 2, 8 breaks down into 4 times 2, 5 doesn't break down, 2 doesn't break down, 4 breaks down into 2 times 2, and 2 doesn't break down. So either way, I'm still left with the exact same prime factorization, no matter which way I break it down. The important part of prime factorization is that you will be given prime factors, and you're going to have to determine whether or not they're correct or not. So obviously, if they want to say if they give us this number, 2 times 2 times 3 times 6, would that be prime factorization? No, that would not be prime factorization because this 6 right here is not prime. For it to be prime factorization, every single number in your all of your factors have to be prime. So the correct way would have been 2 times 2 times 3, and then that 6 would have been 2 times 3. That would have been the correct prime factorization for this one. Now how do we check a prime factorization? Like if we had 2 times 2 times 3 times 5, we would just multiply it out. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 times 5 is 60. So this would have been the prime factorization of 60. And so all you have to do is multiply the numbers out. So the things you're looking for is you are making sure that you multiply them out. You're making sure that all of your numbers are prime. Because if one of them is not prime, it cannot be the prime factorization of a number. Then when you're done, you just multiply them out and get it to match a number.